They say Diana Ross conquered the world with her voice and glamour. But the secret ritual she performs every single night before bed reveals a side of the Motown legend that fans never knew existed. While millions know her as the diva who commanded stages with the Supremes and dominated charts as a solo artist, what Diana Ross does in the quiet moments before sleep is so unexpectedly intimate and profound that it challenges everything you think you know about this music icon. For decades, she's hidden this deeply personal practice from the public eye, until now. Diana Ernestine Earl Ross entered the world in Detroit, Michigan in 1944, born into a working-class family that would never have imagined their daughter would become one of the most recognizable voices in music history. Growing up in Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing projects, young Diana was surrounded by the raw energy and soulful sounds that would later define the Motown movement. Her journey to stardom began in 1959 when she joined neighborhood friends Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard to form the Primettes, later renamed the Supremes. Berry Gordy Jr.'s Motown Records became their home, and under his guidance, the trio would go on to become the most commercially successful Motown act of all time. Between 1964 and 1969, the Supremes delivered 12 #1 hits, making them the most successful recording group of the 1960s. But behind the sequined gowns, perfectly choreographed moves, and chart-topping success, Diana Ross was developing something much more personal and profound. Even during the height of Supremes mania, when she was performing night after night in front of screaming crowds, Ross began cultivating a private ritual that would become the cornerstone of her emotional and artistic life. Those closest to Ross during the Motown years noticed that despite her public confidence and stage presence, she possessed an almost mystical connection to language and emotion that went far beyond typical performer intuition. Backup singers and band members would often comment on how Ross seemed to tap into something deeper during recording sessions, as if she was channeling emotions from a source that others couldn't access. This connection to the emotional undercurrents of music wasn't accidental. Ross had begun developing a highly personal practice that involved immersing herself in poetry and literature, not just as entertainment, but as a way to maintain what she called her emotional authenticity. Even as the Supremes dominated the charts and performed for presidents and royalty, Diana Ross was quietly building a relationship with words and feelings that would sustain her through decades of changes in both her personal life and the music industry. When Diana Ross launched her solo career in 1970, leaving the Supremes behind, many industry observers wondered if she could maintain her success without the group dynamic that had made her famous. What they didn't know was that Ross had been preparing for this transition in ways that went far beyond vocal coaching or business planning. The bedtime ritual that would define the rest of her career had actually begun during her Supremes years, but it intensified dramatically once she became a solo artist. Every single night, without exception, Diana Ross would spend time reading poetry aloud to herself. This wasn't casual reading or simple relaxation. It was a deliberate practice designed to keep her connected to the emotional depths that she believed were essential to authentic musical performance. Ross developed this practice after recognizing that the demands of fame in the entertainment industry were threatening to disconnect her from the genuine emotions that had always fueled her best performances. She realized that without conscious effort to maintain her emotional sensitivity, she risked becoming just another technically proficient performer without the soul that had made her special. The poetry she chose ranged from classical works by authors like Maya Angelou and Langston Hughes to contemporary pieces that spoke to her personal experiences as a Black woman in America. She would read these poems not just silently, but aloud, allowing her voice to explore the rhythms and emotions of the language in a way that directly informed her musical interpretation. "I need to stay connected to the feelings that make music meaningful," Ross explained in a rare interview about her personal practices. "The words help me remember why I'm singing." The existence of Diana Ross's nightly poetry ritual first came to public attention almost by accident in the late 1980s. During a magazine photo shoot at her home, a journalist noticed an extensive collection of poetry books on her bedside table. many of them well-worn and filled with handwritten notes in the margins. When asked about the books, Ross initially tried to deflect the question, clearly uncomfortable with revealing such a personal aspect of her life. However, the interviewer persisted, and Ross eventually admitted that she read poetry every night before bed as a way to stay in the right emotional state for her music and her connection with audiences. The revelation surprised many people in the music industry who had always seen Ross as the epitome of glamorous professionalism. The idea that this polished performer spent her private moments engaged in such an introspective and literary practice seemed almost contradictory to her public image. Ross explained that the ritual served multiple purposes. Beyond keeping her emotionally centered, it helped her translate complex feelings into the kind of musical expression that could reach her audiences on a deeper level. She described the practice as essential to her artistic integrity, something that prevented her from becoming disconnected from the human experiences that great music is supposed to reflect. The timing of this revelation was particularly significant because it came during a period when Ross was facing intense scrutiny from both critics and fans who questioned whether her later work maintained the emotional authenticity of her earlier recordings. What Diana Ross instinctively understood through her nightly poetry ritual, scientists and psychologists would later validate through research on the connections between language, emotion, and artistic expression. Studies have shown that regular engagement with poetry and literature can enhance emotional intelligence and deepen a person's ability to access and articulate complex feelings. The practice of reading poetry aloud, which Ross had been doing for decades, activates multiple areas of the brain simultaneously. The rhythmic elements of poetry engage the same neural pathways involved in musical processing, while the emotional content helps maintain connections to the feelings that fuel authentic artistic expression. Music industry professionals who worked with Ross throughout her career began to understand how this practice influenced her approach to recording and performance. Producers noted that Ross had an unusual ability to find the emotional core of a song, even when working with material that hadn't been specifically written for her. The ritual also helped explain Ross's longevity as a performer. While many artists from her era struggled to maintain emotional authenticity as they aged, and their lives became more removed from the experiences that had originally inspired their music, Ross continued to deliver performances that felt genuine and connected to real human emotions. Her commitment to this practice never wavered, even during the most challenging periods of her career and personal life, including her highly publicized legal battles and relationship struggles in the 1980s and 1990s. As Diana Ross celebrates her 80th birthday in 2024, her nightly poetry ritual has become something fans find both surprising and deeply moving. In an era when many celebrities seem disconnected from authentic human experiences, Ross's commitment to maintaining her emotional sensitivity through literature strikes many as both elegant and profoundly wise. "People sometimes ask me how I've stayed connected to my music for so long," Ross said in a recent interview. "The answer is that I never stopped caring about the feelings behind the songs. The poetry helps me remember that music is about human experiences, not just entertainment." Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.